Ephrael Stern is a fascinating case study within Warhammer 40k's lore and galaxy, mainly because she's arguably unique. 40k is full of characters with impossible might, strength, the ability to bend reality, and more. You have powerful beings of malice like the Chaos Gods, godlike men such as the Emperor, perpetuals like Urda who got done dirty, and other oddballs like the warp entity Tauva. And then you go down the chain and you see folks like Magnus, Yvraine, Saint Celestine, ordinary men like Rest in Peace's Yarrick, and Astartes such as Iconius. In a galaxy that has been worked on by hundreds of writers and literally thousands of people for decades, it is really hard to make a character stand out. And I can point to a few awesome characters that kinda just don't get brought up in wider discussions because they either have fairly self-contained stories or they're just not brought into the wider narrative again. As an example, Battle Sister Myria and Sister Hospitaller Verity. I challenge you to find more than a handful of obscure Reddit posts about them. Some of the stuff in their stories have huge implications that I have included in past lore videos. So why then does Ephrael stand out to me? Well, that's because, again, she's unique. Her very existence is a head-scratcher to some, and I've seen folks legitimately struggle with understanding her comics. So this lore short will explain the basics of who she was, what happened to her, and how she got her abilities. Primarily, I'll only cover the first Demona Fuge story, the Screaming Cage, but the rest will be covered in the future. This is supposed to be a simpler episode after all, and generally speaking, I'll save a deep dive for later. So bear in mind that this video is nowhere near exhaustive. Now, let's begin. Ephrael Stern, sometimes referred to as the Demona Fuge, is a member of the Adeptus Sororitas through a combination of fate, luck, and most importantly, her unyielding faith in the God Emperor. She was blessed or cursed with the incredible power and knowledge of the Empyrean. She terrifies and fascinates all she encounters, striking awe and suspicion into the Imperium, genuine malice and resentment within the realm of chaos, and actual confusion and frustration in groups like the Necrons. Her power surpasses that of most Psykers, and her strange existence makes her hard to predict and counter. Now, for those of you who are unfamiliar with her, why have the Sisters of Battle accepted what would be, to them at least, a witch worthy of execution? Well, let's start with her early life. Before Ephrael was born, her parents had promised to relinquish her so that she may become a member of the Adeptus Sororitas. Even before she became a fully fledged battle sister, she showed promise and was eventually able to take her sacred oaths of adherence. This was when she was sent to the Order of Our Martyred Lady and subsequently stationed on the world of Ophelia. From there, she would swiftly rise in her position, becoming a Seraphim in record time. Eventually, Ephrael and a detachment of Battle Sisters were sent to investigate a missing convent of Sororitas from the Orders Pronatus. For those of you not versed in the elements of the Adeptus Sororitas, the Pronatus discovers and studies artifacts of importance to the ecclesiarchy, while also protecting them. But, as you will see shortly, some of those artifacts can be very, very dangerous and even downright heretical. When Ephrael and her sisters reached the world of Parnis, they found the servants of Slaanesh. A greater demon, a keeper of secrets called Astaroth, had massacred the convent, and they were just going to be its latest victims. Ephrael, alongside her sisters, fell in battle, but something brought her back. Someone, or rather, lots of someones. You see, the convent had not been killed entirely. Rather, Astaroth took hundreds of sororitas and bound them together, bodies, minds, souls, and all, into a single torturous construct, the Screaming Cage. What Astaroth didn't realize, however, is that it had inadvertently just fused nearly 1,000 of the most pious women in the galaxy together. The Screaming Cage, with the collectively unbroken wills of those that comprised it, resurrected Ephrael with their combined faith. Now returned to life, Ephrael was directed to flee and ultimately managed to escape as the lone survivor, though her sanity at that point was in shambles. She had no recollection of what had happened to her, strange abilities that many saw as outright heretical, and a connection to the Empyrean she couldn't really understand. She'd essentially been reborn and struggled to rationalize this. For an entire 4 years, she was imprisoned and observed, painting many runes and seemingly nonsensical things. One of her sisters then proceeded to attack her, having been possessed by a demon of Slaanesh. Ephrael responded by literally ripping the demon from the body of the fallen woman with her bare hands. This would spark an inquisitorial investigation led by Silas' hand into her nature to settle the debate of whether she ought to be destroyed or put to good use. The battered woman was put through grueling trials that would break any lacking true faith, but Ephrael would ultimately emerge with her love for the God Emperor intact. As such, Silas' hand saw fit not only to reinstate her as a full member of the Sisterhood, but also to return her to the Seraphim with the rank of Sister Superior. Obviously, this proved to be controversial. Many genuinely considered Ephrael to be a tainted witch, after all. That said, the investigation had not yet been concluded, and so Silas, Ephrael, and a detachment of the martyred lady would once again return to Parnas. Along the way, an incident with a Slaneshi demon and navigator occurred that I cannot really get into if I want to stay on this platform. So the only thing I can say there is that basically many demons see things differently from us. This demon was seeing various parts of the crew and Sisterhood by the brightness of their souls and saw, quote, nothing within Ephrael, as she herself put it. After this incident, the expedition would be marooned on Parnas, where they pushed into the Lost Convent. Once again, Ephrael would come across the Screaming Cage in all of its tormented agony. But let's rewind a second, or rather 300 years. I'll quote the graphic novel directly here. Once we were as you, once we were sororitas. Ours was not the way of battle, rather we followed the winding path of study. We found our direction when it was discovered, a greater demon of Slanesh, a keeper of secrets. We knew not how it came to be imprisoned, but our course was clear. Perhaps through study we might better understand the enemy and learn its weaknesses. The price was high, many of our numbers succumbed to its lies and whispers, and had to be cleansed by sword and fire. So we moved the study here, hidden from righteous eyes until we were certain our knowledge was safe to share. For 300 years we continued our blessed inquiry, and the Imperium forgot we ever existed. Our studies were finally ended when it escaped. He considered himself an artist of pain. We are his masterpiece. Our souls were not enough. He needed still more to leave this plane and return to the great darkness which spawned him. When you and your comrades arrived, Astaroth was waiting and claimed those of you not strong enough to resist him. Sister slew sister. It was not long before you alone remained. Your valor was not enough to withstand them. You fought on with mortal wounds. I remember I jumped. A leap of faith. I died? But you were free of chaos, Ephrael Stern. And we were not finished with you. Astaroth bound us together so that our suffering might be shared equally, but all our minds combined and magnified. We healed your wounds, started your heart beating again, and then we gave you one instruction. Flee. Yes, I remember. I knew nothing other than that I had to get as far away as possible. We hid you from the eyes of the enemy, masked your soul from those who might have sought it out. We had to communicate. Our study had yielded a great knowledge we worked through you. We knew that the enemy would one day find you, and so we made you strong and fast, that you might defend yourself. When you were attacked, our tie was broken. Now we would share the last of our secrets with you, that you may complete our great work. So, in short, Ephrael is unique. She's not an imperial demon, but she's not a psyker either. She's not a saint, but she's not a witch. She's a Demona Fuge. The culmination of faith, forbidden knowledge, agony, and wrath. She serves as a repository of everything learned by those within the Screaming Cage, and was engineered more or less to be able to protect herself and that knowledge. She needs to be durable, strong, able to keep the great enemy away, and hard to see. So the cage made her body capable of taking more punishment. With that increased durability, they gifted her with strength, allowing her to tear through armor with her bare hands. They bestowed unto her power brought on by their knowledge. And of course, the reason demons don't really see anything when they see Ephrael, for the most part, they can still make her out, is because they did this by design. They masked her. Essentially, Ephrael is a reconstituted soul imbued with warp fuckery that was shoved back into her body after being shaped into the perfect weapon. This is why the ruinous powers, servants of Slanesh especially, given her tie to them, fear and despise her. She represents everything chaos hates in mankind. Ephrael is faithful to the Emperor, a bounty of psychic potential. I would personally argue that she's hated for the same reason chaos hates the Emperor, just on a far smaller scale. She's the embodiment of human potential, and furthermore, she understands the war better than, well, just about anyone with exceptions. But alas, that is all for today. We'll cover Ephrael more in another video, and while you're here, please feel free to check out my first animated video on the Age of Apostasy. The second part will release in hopefully 2 weeks, but I make no promises there. Alright, I will see you in the cosmos, friends.